Everything is a learning game. And if you want to learn more about how to design learning games, it is very simple.
So I'm very excited to introduce one of the pioneers in the space of learning games, of serious games for learning. Sivasailam Thiagarajan, better known as Thiagi, has been doing serious games for a long, long time. He's a pioneer in the field, and we're so excited to have him on this episode of the unofficial, unauthorized history of learning games. I was reading a book published, I think, in the 1960s. It said you couldn't walk into a boardroom without finding some kind of learning game.
Mhm.
And wow, when I was growing up, that was not the case at all. Can you tell us a little bit about the journey that you and the industry have gone through in terms of using games for learning?
I came to the United States in 1967. Earlier, I was a high school teacher, already using games, and I got a job when I finished my PhD to design games to train teachers on how to mainstream students who are educationally challenged. So that is how it all started. In 1968, I saw an, a little announcement which says North American Simulation and Gaming Association is going to have its annual conference in Gaithersburg, Maryland. And if you are interested, send proposals. So I went to my professor and I said, I would like to do that. He said, go ahead, but since you're a newcomer, maybe they will not accept it the first time. So I wrote three different proposals and sent it to them, and they ended up accepting all three of them.
You've been developing learning games for quite some time. And I think the origin story, your origin story of games for learning is teaching high school kids who are at risk. You were teaching physics and you had them borrow some carburetors from uh, local nearby cars. Can you explain how that came about?
I became a high school teacher of physics and chemistry, general science it was called. And I was one of those days I was supposed to teach about internal combustion engine. I saw 50 of my students in my crowded classroom, and half of them were had a glazed look. And they said, I got to do something like that. And I told them, okay, everybody get ready. We are going to have a contest. And your job is to go out into the street and bring back a carburetor from a parked car. And one of the students said, hey, teacher, what's a carburetor? I said, look at lesson 10 in your physics book. And for the first time, they opened the book and they looked at it and they turned it upside down. They look at the picture and they say, time is running. And so they went out, and I think six of the teams did bring back a carburetor, and we took it apart and they were listening very carefully. He said, part two of the contest, go back and put the carburetor in the car in such a way it will start. You fail if the car doesn't start, you fail if you get caught by a policeman. And it suddenly dawned on me, this is what we need to do. We need to do something slightly dangerous and illegal. So that was the origin of my interest in game design.
Wow, fascinating. You have all these elements of games coming together and are probably in the carburetor. And I, I love it. Go do something illegal. Why was that so effective from a learning perspective? And then what design principles have you used through the years to create some of your games?
My PhD was on cognitive sciences. I did a secondary analysis, a meta-analysis of what contributes, influences learning. And I found out there are lots of dichotomies, one of which is learning takes place through participation. If you don't participate in the learning process, if you just receive what the teacher tells you or the textbook tells you, you don't learn. How can I increase participation? Similarly, another dichotomy was experiential learning versus logical learning. Learning by reading books and listening to lectures and talking to experts versus just through trial and error doing things. So I decided I there is lots of evidence to show that experiential learning and participatory learning is what makes things good. And I said, I'm going to make a list of principles I should be using. I'm going to give you my 10 principles. Listen carefully, take notes. Principle number one, design training activities while you're delivering training. Principle number two, believe in the ADDIE model, but be skeptical. You take the steps in the ADDIE model, combine the steps, drop some of the steps, rearrange the steps, and create your own instructional design model. And look at the three important things: content, training content, activities, training activities, and objectives, training objectives, and always align them. So you take a content, whatever content you want to present, make sure it is going to be used in an activity, make sure it reaches one of your objectives, and focus on designing activities and not content, because there is a lot of content already available. And when you design activities, take the structure of any game which you find interesting to you and recirculate to teach different topics, and require people to learn collaboratively and reward them for learning collaboratively. And let the inmates run the asylum. Let the participants create their own content, their own activities, and use them, and be authentic. So anytime you do training, have tests, you have activities, you have examples. All of them should be realistic, should be authentic, should be real world type of thing. And the last item is, instead of delivering, presenting content, facilitate activities. Let the students do activities. Good. That's the end. That concludes today's session.
No, those are great, but I want to go back to number one, which basically you were saying kind of build the instruction as you're going or build the experience as you're going. So can you delve into that a little bit? It's very interesting.
If we do analysis and design long before I deliver it, the students have changed, the topics have changed, the world has changed. So let me see if I can do it. And since I had a toolkit of structures into which I can plug in any content, I found this a useful kind of an approach.
Look at the situation in the audience with as fresh eyes as possible because you will be learning along with them, and it'll be a group
Exactly.
experience. So the expert that piece that you bring is the design of the activities, and
Yes,
that's what you were saying in your. Oh, fantastic!
exactly.
How has the field changed? Are people more acceptable? Does it go through ebbs and flows of, hey, we want games? No, we don't want games.
Ever since the time of Aristotle, nothing has changed. True, effective instruction is always the same. What has changed? Today it is gamification. Tomorrow it is experiential learning. Day after tomorrow it is micro learning. But all good, effective training uses the same principles. I don't let the current fads and terminology worry me.
Basically saying, stick to the fundamentals. People learn that way. That's what you should do. You have lots of different labels, but really, it's the same thing as it's always been. Hmm.
With my clients, I tell them, you're not buying the stuff I'm doing. You're buying competency improvement on your participant.
So, overall, could you sum up your educational philosophy in just a few words?
Three words, just do it and keep learning as you do it. Debrief your participants, debrief yourself, learn as you go through it.
So, do you have any unofficial, unauthorized story of learning games that you could reveal?
Everything is a learning game. And if you want to learn more about how to design a learning game, it is very simple. And all you have to do is do some learning games, get a copy of the gamification of learning and instruction, and get a copy of Play to Learn. Then, if you run out of new ideas, get a copy of my books.